Hello, world, and welcome to the In My Footsteps podcast. I am Christopher Setterlin, coming to you from the vacation destination known as Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and this is episode 215. It's a little bit of a break from spooky season, as this week we're going to talk about all things 2001 in pop culture. We're going to look at television shows, the best, the worst, the weirdest, some of the most popular commercials from 2001. We're going to look at music in 2001, new artists, big songs, big albums. We're going to look at some weird and funny news events from 2001. Some of these you won't believe are real. And of course, there'll be a This Week in History and Time Capsule from This Week in 2001. It features when Barry Bonds broke the single-season home run record in Major League Baseball. But most of all, this episode, 2001 in pop culture, is a celebration, a birthday gift of my middle niece, Emma. This is the best birthday gift that your crazy uncle can give you. Everything that happened the year you were born. So let's get into 2001, the year in pop culture, coming up right now on episode 215 of the In My Footsteps podcast. So what do you want to talk about this week? There is no spooky voice this week. I know I had mentioned I was going to do a special intro this week, but it's a little break from spooky season. I don't want my niece Emma to think that her birthday is scary, so it needs some kind of spooky introduction. Like, happy birthday, Emma, here's your birthday. But boy, it's going to be a fun show, a loaded show. There is so much as far as, I can't believe 2001 is 24 years ago, first of all. I'm sure a lot of you that are my age are thinking the same thing. But before we start the show off, I just wanted to say thank you all for tuning in to episode 215. Welcome to your weekly dose of Gen X nostalgia. Even if you're not Gen X, you can still enjoy it. Of course, I can't start the show off right without thanking my Patreon subscribers, Laurie, Mary Lou, Ashley, Kevin, Marguerite, Leo, Neglectoid, Crystal, Matt, Dr. Shrimp, Porto Chico. Thank you all so much for being my biggest supporters, my biggest backers. The ones who literally put their money where their mouth is to support me, my never-ending quest to be a full-time, self-employed content creator, artist. You too can become a Patreon member. You can become a subscriber for $5 a month and get access to bonus podcast episodes, the remastered Without a Map live streams. You can also this month get the ebook version of my new book, In Their Footsteps, the interesting people, places, and events of Cape Cod history. That's kind of my gift, another gift to my Patreon subscribers, a free ebook version, 40 stories of Cape Cod history. You can also get it through Amazon. There are paperback versions. I made sure there was ebook and an actual hard copy. I created a landing page for this new book. It's in the podcast notes if you want to see more of what it's about. You can also become a Patreon member on the free tier. It's an ever-growing free tier. The more the merrier over there. Also, a heads up, you know I've been mentioning over the last several weeks about the fundraiser for the When Henry Met Henry short film, my directorial debut. That fundraiser is closing as of this Friday from when the podcast goes live, October 10th. So if you're hearing this on the day the podcast goes live, you can still go and donate. But pretty soon after, I'm going to go through my podcast notes for the last several episodes and scrub that GoFundMe link. Because I don't want people a few years from now going and donating to something that's not there. But thank you so much to anyone who's listening that has donated to that fundraiser. It did really well. I'm super thrilled with it. I know Frank is super thrilled with it. We're going to film that movie the end of next week, so it's coming up fast. And obviously, I will have way more information about that. There'll probably be an interview on my YouTube channel with Frank Durant, probably after we film, because I don't think we'll have time to do an interview during the actual filming. Otherwise, we're not doing our job. But we can get more into housekeeping at the end of the podcast. This year, it is my birthday present to my niece Emma. It is also a great look back at what was a very busy year in pop culture. So let's grab our gigantic remote, let us turn on the flat screen TV, and kick off 2001, the year in pop culture, with television in 2001. Let me start this segment off by reiterating the fact that 2001 was 24 years ago. It's sort of in this gray area of at least my life at my current age, where it's not quite so recent that I'm like, no, that doesn't count as nostalgia, but it's also not quite so old that when I reminisce about it, I feel young. When 2001 started, I was 23 years old, so I guess technically young. 2001, it was a pivotal year in American television, marked by the debut of iconic shows, cancellation of long-running favorites, major cultural shifts that reshaped the medium. This was the dawn of the 21st century. So we should start off, I guess, by looking at what were the new shows that debuted in 2001. The first one that I thought of was 24, which debuted on Fox in November. This was the show starring Kiefer Sutherland as Jack Bauer. He was a counter-terrorism agent, but the big thing about 24 was the fact that it was in real time with a ticking clock. So basically, the whole season would be 24 hours, with each episode being 1 hour, or thereabouts. The show in general was on for 9 seasons and 204 overall episodes, and there was also the 24 Redemption series. Another new show was Smallville, which debuted on the WB network. This was the origin story of Superman as a Kansas teenager. It starred Tom Welling as young Clark Kent and took the whole Superman superhero ethos and made it more able to be connected to younger audiences, blending that superhero mythology with teen drama. Smallville was on for 10 seasons and 217 total episodes on the WB and then later on the CW network. Another show that debuted that went on to become a huge hit was Scrubs on NBC. This starred Zach Braff, Donald Faison, and a whole lot of others. A medical comedy drama with a quirky, surreal style. Scrubs broke away from the more traditional sitcom model and became a cult favorite. Scrubs, in its initial run, was on for 9 seasons and 182 episodes. I say initial run because ABC has revived the series, ordering 10 episodes to premiere for the 2025-26 television season. The last big new show to debut in 2001 was Alias on ABC. This was the spy thriller created by J.J. Abrams. It starred Jennifer Garner as Sydney Bristow, a double agent for the CIA. This show combined action, serialized storytelling, and mystery in a way that helped pave the way for the upcoming golden age of television. Alias ended up running for 5 seasons and 105 total episodes. As far as the most popular TV shows of 2001, they were kind of a who's who, a murderer's row of popular shows at the time. Nearing the end of its run was Friends. It was on from 1994 to 2004, about the group of 6 friends living in New York. You've heard me mention it so many times on time capsules on the podcast. Anytime it's late 90s, early 2000s, this was normally the number one show. The only other one that comes close is another one that was huge still, and that was ER. ER was still in the middle of its 15-season run, 331 total episodes. ER would end up winning 128 total industry awards. I just remember that ER was always appointment viewing for my mom, and she didn't have a ton of appointment viewing TV shows, at least at that time, so I knew ER must have been good. Other big shows from 2001 showed kind of the changing landscape of television, because you had CSI, Crime Scene Investigation, which was in its 2nd season, but had already become a massive success. In total, CSI would be on for 15 seasons and 337 total episodes. And there was a follow-up show, CSI Vegas, which debuted in 2021, lasting for 3 seasons and 41 episodes. But then you'd get to Survivor, which launched the reality boom in 2000. To this point, Survivor has had 49 seasons and over 700 episodes. Obviously, it's different. It hasn't been 49 years since then, so the seasons kind of come 2 per year. It proved that the reality show boom wasn't a fad. I mean, some of the shows that have come out have been garbage, but Survivor has stood the test of time. But then in 2001, you still had room for classic sitcoms like Everybody Loves Raymond, which was continuing to thrive. Not all shows could stay strong. There were some shows that were canceled, like Xena, Warrior Princess. This was a syndicated show starring Lucy Lawless. It left behind a legacy of female-led action. You had the end of Walker, Texas Ranger, the Chuck Norris action drama. And you also had the end of Spin City, the popular ABC show that originally starred Michael J. Fox, but he departed after the end of the 2000s season due to the complications from his Parkinson's disease and was replaced by Charlie Sheen. But you know, when I do the years in pop culture, I don't just do new and popular. I also need to include some weird or forgotten or worst TV shows from the year, and boy, you're gonna get them. We're starting with Pasadena. This was a primetime soap opera on Fox. It aired for 1 season. They filmed 13 episodes, but it was canceled after 4. Now, there is a bit of a caveat with Pasadena because it was critically acclaimed, but it premiered the same week as 9/11 happened. So it's almost like it was a victim of timing. But I would think if the show was that good, they would have tried to bring it back for a second season with no huge world events kind of in the way, but they didn't. There was a sitcom called Some of My Best Friends. This starred Jason Bateman as a mild-mannered, gay writer living in Greenwich Village. It was inspired by a 1997 film called Kiss Me, Guido. This show lasted a total of 7 episodes, with 2 actually going unaired, so it lasted 5 episodes. One of the big issues was unfair comparisons with the show Will and Grace, the only other hit show that had a gay character or gay lead character. Another debut that was bad, that it's a little bit of a cheat, but it's basically anything from the XFL. The XFL was the Extreme Football League, created by WWF owner Vince McMahon. It was his attempt to compete with the NFL, giving different rules, different camera angles. The first week of the XFL actually did well in the ratings, but quickly bombed out. To the point where they were doing stupid wrestling stunts like cameras in the cheerleaders' locker rooms. They had WWF announcers Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler coming over to call football games. It was canceled after the first season, and it went away and didn't return until 2020. This time it lasted a few more seasons, but was eventually folded into the UFL League at the end of 2023. And the last worst show of 2001 was a game show called Chains of Love.
Push so hard.
The funniest moment was when I decided to pull the girls into the pool. That was a fun moment.
Chains of Love. Get attached next Tuesday at 8, 7 Central on UPN.
It revolves around a man or woman being chained to 4 members of the opposite sex over 4 days and nights. The contestant was known as the Picker, which already doesn't sound good, but they were given $10,000. So to win this game, you have to spend 4 days and nights chained to people for 10 grand. Could you do that? And I mean for that little money. Like, really? They would one by one eliminate people, so unchain them. And then when they were left with one person, they could choose to split the money with that person or just tell them to go screw. It was originally ordered by NBC, but ended up being produced by UPN, so that should have told you something right away. It lasted 6 whole episodes. But now we get to look at some famed commercials from 2001. I had to do a lot of grueling research to find popular commercials from 2001. Don't you feel bad for me? I'll introduce them and give a little clip from them. First is the Gap Give a Little Bit commercial.
Give a little bit of your love to me.
Now's the time that we need to share. So find yourself. We're on our way back home.
Yeah, those were the ones. They were everywhere for a few years. There was this one from a product called Lipton Sizzle and Stir.
Jim Shark, I grew this carrot, and so help me, I am going to use it. I love my vegetables too, sweetie. Little Richard, see if Pat needs help.
That one was popular because it featured Chuck Woolery, Sally Jesse Raphael, Pat Morita, and Little Richard. There was also the Origins of the Geico Gecko.
Hello? No, I can't save you money on car insurance. You want Geico, not Gecko. Well, that's uncalled for.
Geico. A 15-minute call could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Now, granted, he didn't start in 2001, but it was different than it is today. There was also this famed Joy of Pepsi commercial starring Britney Spears. And the last commercial is probably the most punchable face from that time period. The Dell dude.
For just $7.99. Really? She's intrigued. Excellent. Because right now, you can get free shipping.
Call or go online today, and shipping is free. There's great deals on notebooks, too.
Dude, you're getting a Dell.
Easy to buy, easy to own, easy as Dell.
Oh my god, you remember that? Dude, you're getting a Dell. I think his face was punchable to me, mainly because I was in my quarter-life crisis phase. So I was probably way more angry than I should have been. But those are some of the popular commercials, or most memorable, from 2001. But what about television as the industry in general? What was going on in 2001? I mentioned the reality TV boom. I mentioned Survivor. There was also Big Brother. I know that was a huge deal for my mom and stepdad. When those came out and were popular, then you had networks everywhere experimenting with different reality shows, dating shows like The Bachelor that would come out the next year, celebrity-driven reality shows, something like The Osbournes, which came out in 2002, or then a few years later you had The Simple Life with Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie. You had more in the way of serialized storytelling like 24 and Alias. It demonstrated the growing appetite for a more complex serialized narrative. It was sort of like breaking a movie down into 20-something episodes. In 2001, you had the continuing expansion of cable, where HBO and MTV, they were already well established. You had newer channels like FX trying to more aggressively assert themselves against the big four networks, CBS, NBC, ABC, and Fox. This was highlighted by HBO's show The Soprano, which was in its prime, proving that cable originals could rival network TV. You had the rise of digital transition DVRs. TiVo and other DVR technology were slowly gaining traction. You remember TiVo? I might do a segment on that on the podcast coming up at some point, just so I can have that sound that TiVo made. Yeah, that's the one. But these things, they gave audiences a control over when and how they watched TV. It was an early sign of the shift away from appointment viewing. And of course, you can't talk about television in 2001 without its connection to the September 11th attacks. You had the 24-hour news coverage where you were seeing things happen in real time. But in addition to the event itself, you had networks that were suspending their regular programming. They were adapting the tone of their entertainment shows. You had certain storylines that were being delayed or altered, like some that might have scripts with terrorism in it were changed. In the end, 2001 in television, it straddled eras. You still had network sitcoms and dramas. You had DVDs still, but cable channels and new storytelling styles were beginning to redefine what TV was. Then you had DVR and TiVo coming up. It's an era that doesn't seem like it could be that long ago, but it's almost a quarter century ago, and it really kicked the 21st century into high gear. This week in history, we're going back, shocker, 24 years to October 5th, 2001, and the day that Barry Bonds broke the single-season home run record in Major League Baseball. The single-season home run record in Major League Baseball had already undergone a seismic shift just 3 years earlier. It was in 1998 that Mark McGwire of the St. Louis Cardinals and Sammy Sosa of the Chicago Cubs captivated the world in a duel for the home run crown. It was McGwire that ultimately set the new record at 70 home runs, and that number, it seemed superhuman, something that never could have happened, basically because for 40 years the record was 61. From opening day in 2001, Barry Bonds displayed an unreal level of power. He hit 9 home runs in April, 17 in May, and 11 more in June. While players can sometimes cool off during the dog days of summer, Barry Bonds never slowed. Pitchers often refused to give him anything to hit. He was walked 177 times that season, 35 of them intentional. On October 5th, 2001, at Pacific Bell Park in San Francisco, Barry Bonds stepped up against Los Angeles Dodgers pitcher Chan-Ho Park. In the first inning, he launched home run number 71 deep into right field, breaking McGwire's record. And then moments later, he added number 72 for good measure. 2 days later, on October 7th, against the same Dodgers, Bonds hit his final home run of the season, number 73. His stats for the 2001 season are otherworldly. They're like video game numbers. 73 home runs, which is the single-season home run record, 177 walks, which is also a record that still stands, an .863 slugging percentage, which is the highest in Major League Baseball history, a .515 on-base percentage, and an OPS of 1.379. OPS is on-base percentage plus slugging. The reaction to Bonds setting the single-season home run record was complicated. Many fans marveled at his sheer power, but there were whispers and then eventually loud accusations of performance-enhancing drug use. Bonds was never suspended during his playing career, but the Balco scandal would later cast a long shadow over his achievements. It's very telling that Barry Bonds is not in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. I just remember seeing a huge difference in him physically from when he was playing for the Pittsburgh Pirates in the early 1990s to how he looked when he started playing for the San Francisco Giants. I think Bonds was a Hall of Fame player before he started using performance-enhancing drugs. But stories have been told that Bonds saw what McGwire and Sosa were doing, and the fact that they were being accused of PED use, and he said, I could be better than them if I did what they did. More than 2 decades later, no player has seriously approached 73 home runs. Aaron Judge's 62 in 2022 is the closest. That's a feat that some traditionalists hail as the clean home run record. Love him or hate him, Barry Bonds' 2001 season was nothing short of extraordinary. It was a year when every at-bat felt like a must-see television event. It was when one man dominated pitchers so thoroughly that baseball had no choice but to change around him. And Barry Bonds broke the single-season Major League Baseball home run record 24 years ago this week in history. Now it's time for a brand new time capsule. We're going back the same week to October 10th, 2001. It is the birth date of my niece Emma. What was going on in the world of pop culture the day she came into the world? Well, let's find out. The number one song was Fallen by Alicia Keys. This was her debut single off of her debut album, Songs in A Minor. It mixed hip-hop beats with classical piano, as she's a classically trained pianist. The song was number one for 6 non-consecutive weeks. It ended up winning Song of the Year at the Grammy Awards in 2002, with the album Songs in A Minor selling over 12 million copies worldwide and making Alicia Keys into a global star. The number one movie was Training Day, and you could get into the theater with a ticket costing $5.65. This is the thriller crime drama starring Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke. They are LAPD narcotics agents, and it follows them through 24 hours in some of the gang-riddled areas of LA. The movie was a big hit, making $105 million on a budget of $45. It's 74% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, but Denzel Washington stands out and gets rave reviews for his role as Detective Alonzo Harris. And I can agree. If you haven't seen Training Day, I highly recommend it. The number one TV show was Friends. Just in the last segment about TV in 2001, I talked about Friends still being a juggernaut. It made household names out of its 6 main stars: Jennifer Aniston, Courtney Cox, Lisa Kudrow, David Schwimmer, Matt LeBlanc, Matthew Perry. The show was on for 10 total seasons and 236 episodes. The show was in the top 10 weekly ratings every season, finishing as the number one show for the season of 2001-2002. And as we do with these years in pop culture, when I finish off the time capsule, usually on most weeks I give you something from the time, something you could buy or see or do. Well, we're going to give a bit more of an overview for 2001. So, celebrities born in 2001 include basketball player Anthony Edwards, actress Isabella Merced, and singer-songwriter Billie Eilish. Celebrities who died in 2001 include race car driver Dale Earnhardt, former Beatle George Harrison, R&B singer Aaliyah, television actor Carol O'Connor, film actor Jack Lemmon, and film actor Anthony Quinn. Companies that were founded in 2001 include Boost Mobile, Orbitz.com, the travel site, LegalZoom, and MailChimp, which is an email marketing company. Products that arrived in 2001 include the original iPod, Windows XP, the website Wikipedia, which if that's your only source for a story, you have no source. That's what I was told when I was writing for Cape Cod Life. Also debuting was the Xbox and Bratz dolls. Bratz with a Z, because it's super hip. But there you go. Wrapping up another time capsule, another This Week in History, summing up 2001. Oh, but now it's time to get weird, as we've got a brand new top 5. As I do with these years in pop culture, we're going to look at some of the weirdest and funniest news stories from the year 2001 coming up now. Every time I do these years in pop culture, I enjoy doing all the research. music, TV, This Week in History stuff. I like all of that. But for me, nothing tops researching the weird and funny news stories from 2001 or for any year. It's just funny to see my search history where I'll look up weird news stories, then it'll be funny, unique, bizarre, like all these synonyms. Like I could find different ways to find what I need. And oh boy, 2001 did not disappoint when it comes to weird stories. I did my best to kind of mix in some well-known stories, celebrities, companies, but also a lot of more local things, because those are the ones where you just look at it like, this can't be real. As with most of these top fives, they are in no particular order. I have a few honorable mentions. I try to find 5 honorable mentions, but it's harder with weird news stories. So sadly, I've only got 8. I know, disappointing. But it's like the TV show. 8 is enough. Ooh, dad jokes. Wow, that's bad. Anyway, let's get into these, starting with the honorable mentions for weird and funny news events of 2001. And we'll kick it off with a hang glider hitting the Statue of Liberty. This happened weeks before September 11th. A tourist named Yannick Kilby was hang gliding near the Statue of Liberty. He hoped to get close, but he ended up crashing into the torch. He had to be rescued from 300 feet up there. Another honorable mention is foolish counterfeit money. An unidentified woman in the United States bought an ice cream and paid for it with a fictitious $200 bill that had the portrait of then President George W. Bush on it. For some reason, the ice cream shop owner didn't realize there's no such thing as a $200 bill, but he gave the woman $197 in change. But because it wasn't a copy of an actual piece of U.S. currency, charges couldn't be brought against her for forgery, and the ice cream shop owner said he was treating it as a learning experience. Yeesh, talk about foolish. And the other honorable mention centers around actress Anne Heche deciding that she's no longer a lesbian. She broke up with then-partner Ellen DeGeneres and published her book in 2001, Call Me Crazy. This included her saying she was no longer a lesbian, and she was a walking god that came to Earth via a spaceship. This is more of a sad, psychotic breakdown. So those are the honorable mentions I found. Let's get into the actual top 5, and oh boy, these are nuts. Starting with number 1, the McDonald's Monopoly game scandal. So many of you out there know the Monopoly game through McDonald's. I remember it when I was growing up. You get the different pieces for the board. You always thought you had a chance, you never know, to win the big prizes. Well, you were wrong. 2001 brought to light the 12-year scheme by Jerome Jacobson and others to rig the Monopoly game. Jacobson was a security official at Simon Marketing, which was the company handling the Monopoly game, and he had access to the high-value Monopoly pieces. Jacobson would steal the pieces before they could get shipped out to the McDonald's, then sold these pieces to a network of individuals for cash. Typically for $50,000 if it was a $1 million prize. It was like his cut. There was an anonymous tip to the FBI that started to unravel Jacobson's plan. It turned out his plan had defrauded McDonald's and the customers out of $24 million. Jacobson was charged with mail fraud. He served 37 months in jail and was ordered to pay $12.5 million in restitution. If you want to know more about that, there was a 2020 HBO series called McMillions that covers all of it. Number 2 is Daniel Searfoss and his shoe lenses. Searfoss was a 43-year-old mechanic living in Florida. He was arrested for voyeurism. He had wired hidden cameras on his sneakers that were hooked into a bag that he was carrying so he could go and walk and look up women's skirts. His first arrest for this came on New Year's Eve 2000. He got probation, but then was arrested for it again in November 2001. Here, investigators seized 45 videotapes full of upskirt videos. Oh, but it gets worse. There's a reason why it's in this top 5. Because it turns out that this Daniel Searfoss was using his shoe cam at his probation office, trying to look up the skirt of the cashier. And he was doing it at the church where he had been ordered to do community service. It's like, man, if you really want to see upskirt stuff that bad, there's plenty of magazines that dirty creeps can buy. Number 3 is the story of James Beale, the postal worker. This happened on October 18th, and this is going to be one of those, how can I get through it without laughing too much? Beale worked at a post office in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He was fired for not being good at his job, and you know, there were all those stories about going postal. That's where it came from. Postal workers coming back and shooting up the place. Well, don't worry. James Beale did not go back to the post office and shoot up the place. What he did was he returned with 3 5-gallon buckets. They were not empty, though. If you're eating, I'll give you a chance to put down what you're eating. 3, 2, 1. It was filled with worms, parasites, and porcupine poop. Like, where do you even get that? I'm sure you can see where this is going. James Beale proceeded to throw all of this all over the other employees at the post office. Now think about this. This happened the day after he had been fired from Grand Rapids, from the post office, which means he either has access to loads of porcupines or he was waiting on this. Like he just had stashes of gallon buckets filled with poop and worms. Beale thought this was a fair trade for the insults to his character he felt came about when he was fired. And if you're wondering what the penalty is for soaking your fellow employees in porcupine poop, it is 18 months in federal prison. I don't know if it's more or less time for different animal poop. I would think cow chips could really hurt someone. So I had said that one, put down what you're eating as far as this. Well, number 4 is not going to get much better, so you might just want to put your food away. I'll just say number 4 is Philip Bublé and his dog wife. Yes, this is going to go where you think it's going. Philip Bublé lived in Parkland, Maine. Philip was a 44-year-old man. He lived with his 71-year-old father, Frank Bublé, no relation to Michael Bublé. What happened was that Philip Bublé was stepping out of the shower when his father attacked him with a crowbar. The reason for the attack was the father found out that his son was in a sexual relationship with the family dog. Philip Bublé used the term zoo to describe a person who possesses a deep, passionate love for animals. So this ended up going to trial, going to court. Philip wanted to have his dog wife there with him, but the court people rejected it. And to make it worse, Philip was not a one-dog man. He was cheating on his dog wife with another dog. This all came out in court. Oh, my goodness gracious. I don't understand. I was trying to find out how long in jail Frank Bublé got, but I gave up after reading several articles just with quotes from Philip Bublé about loving his dog wife. All right, we'll end on something that's less gross. Number 5 is Kane Rundle and his train graffiti case. This happened in New South Wales in Australia. The court case is from 2001. The actual incident is from 1994. 15-year-old Kane Rundle was severely injured while traveling on a double-decker silver train. He was hanging out of the train, spraying graffiti on the roof of the train car. He was one of those losers that would spray paint whatever their stupid tags were on everything like they're big men. So this jackass was hanging out of the window, reaching up onto the train car to write, oops. So he got through 2 O's when he was smacked in the head by something that went by. most likely a stanchion or a signal that caused him tremendous injuries. So Kane Rundle sued the State Rail Authority of New South Wales because their windows didn't open more. He said if the windows had opened more, he wouldn't have gotten stuck hanging out there and getting walloped in the head. Obviously, the court sided with the State Rail Authority since Rundle was breaking the law and defacing federal property. But the cases dragged on for years, finally getting a final Court of Appeals resolution in 2001. It's like the cases of burglars breaking into people's houses and getting hurt on something in the house and then suing the homeowners. It's like that kind of foolishness. But there you go. Top 5 weird/funny news stories of 2001. Some that ended up being way grosser than I intended them to be. But we'll wash that taste out of our mouths by going back in the day and looking at the world of music in 2001. This will be with 100% fewer dog wives and way less porcupine poop. Not none, just less. So in a little bit of behind the scenes here of recording the podcast, as I recorded this show live, I had to take a break between the last segment, the top 5, and this one, 2001, the year in music. And that was because I had a haircut appointment. I went about 5 minutes down the street from me to Ray & Sons Barbershop in South Yarmouth. I made my appointment through Booksy with Chris. Yes, you can just walk in and get your haircut, but if you want to get your haircut by the master, you've got to make an appointment, which is what I do. I know back in the old days of the podcast, I used to do these promo segments for local Cape Cod businesses, and once I got more into the Gen X nostalgia stuff, I stopped doing it. But since I literally just got my haircut like a few minutes ago from when I'm recording this, I wanted to make sure I gave them a shout out. Anyone that's on Cape Cod, you should go there if you need a haircut. I can't recommend them enough. If you walk in, anyone that's there is going to give you a good haircut. Attention to detail, affordable pricing. I go to Chris because he's the one I've known him for years. I always feel great when I leave there. And I wanted to mention it on the podcast because if I sound different from the last segment to this one, it's because I got my hair cut. Somehow that changes how I sound and my personality. But Ray & Sons Barbershop is in the Ocean State Job Lot Plaza, the DMV Plaza in South Yarmouth on Route 28. And you can set your appointment up with Chris through Booksy.com. So there you go. It's like a throwback to the old days of the podcast. Ray & Sons Barbershop. Go there if you need a haircut. You will not regret it. I never do. Another thing I do not regret is my love of nostalgia as we get back into 2001, all things pop culture. We're now going to look at the year in music, and man, there was a lot of great music this year. Here at the dawn of the 21st century, we were at a crossroads between the pop-dominated late 90s and the kind of genre-diverse 2000s. I'm sure a lot of you that are my age, a little younger, a little older, you can kind of get a sense of the decades feel in music, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. If I say define the music, you can. It gets a little bit harder to do so when it comes to the 2000s, especially the 2010s and now the 2020s. It seems like these decades don't have a signature sound. Let's start off 2001, the year in music, by looking at the stars that kind of came onto the scene in this year. You heard me mention back in the This Week in History segment that Alicia Keys released her debut album, Songs in A Minor. The lead single, Fallen, was a massive hit, multiple Grammy Award winning. We also had the arrival of Linkin Park, the kind of nu metal band. Hybrid Theory, their debut album, was released in late 2000. I remember I was living in Las Vegas when they burst onto the scene. Their debut single, One Step Closer, kind of kicked down the doors of the nu metal sound. They would go on to be one of the most influential acts of the 21st century, led by the masterful lyrics and vocal talents of Chester Bennington. They were around with a lot of these other nu metal bands of the early 2000s like Papa Roach, Disturbed, Taproot, Puddle of Mud wasn't really new metal, but they definitely gave me Nirvana vibes, at least the lead singer did. You had the arrival of John Mayer with his album Room for Squares. He started off as a regular kind of singer-songwriter, pop, folk, blues, led by the single No Such Thing. I gravitated towards John Mayer, especially in the beginning, because he's the same age as me. He's a few months older. So a lot of what he talked about related to me, including on his album Room for Squares, the song Why Georgia, and he talks about his quarter-life crisis. And I was like, man, that's what I'm going through at this time too. Now granted, as he got more famous, he became more of kind of a D-bag. So I'll say I like his music, but the older he got, the less I liked him. That's my way of kind of hedging my bets there. You had The Strokes with their album Is This It? With the song Last Night. They were kind of a garage rock revival type band, bringing that into the mainstream. They helped open the door for other bands like the White Stripes, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, the Black Keys, Jet, Franz Ferdinand, bands like that. And you had Michelle Branch with her debut album The Spirit Room, her radio-friendly pop rock hits like Everywhere. Ironically, my favorite Michelle Branch songs are the ones that she did with Santana. She did Game of Love and I'm Feeling You. This is around the same time, a couple years after her debut. What were the big events of 2001 in music? Well, it kicked off hard. On January 9th, Apple introduced the iTunes player, which I'm sure the vast majority of you have or had on your computer. I'm looking at my laptop right now. I see that musical note logo. February 1st saw Jennifer Lopez be the first female artist to have a #1 album and a #1 movie in the same week. Her album was J-Lo, the movie was The Wedding Planner. March 16th saw Sean Puffy Combs acquitted on all charges stemming from a December 1999 nightclub shooting in Manhattan. Gee, I wonder if he stayed out of trouble since then. On March 31st, Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown were banned for life from Hollywood's Bel Air Hotel, and they were arrested and jailed for destroying their hotel room. I really wish that they had gotten divorced like right after that. Maybe Whitney Houston would still be alive. April 28th saw the second annual Coachella Festival held in California. It was a single-day event headlined by Jane's Addiction. You also had major acts like Weezer, The Roots, Iggy Pop. On June 16th, LA radio station K-Rock had their 9th annual Weenie Roast concert event, and it was bigger than Coachella. Blink-182, Coldplay, Disturbed, Jane's Addiction, Linkin Park, Papa Roach, Stabbing Westward, Stone Temple Pilots, 311. It's a murderer's row. I wish I'd gone to that show. On July 25th, Mariah Carey checks into a rehab center. It was said to be for extreme exhaustion, but it stems from a very famous unscheduled stop at MTV's Total Request Live, where she did this weird striptease, and then she had a rambling message on her website that included her saying, "I don't know what's going on with my life." On September 6th, at the MTV Video Music Awards, Britney Spears had her famous or infamous performance of her song I'm a Slave for You, including the giant Burmese python. In kind of a morbid story, on September 10th, Blink-182 was filming a video for their song Staying Together for the Kids, and they were playing inside this decrepit old house. And when they came back the next day to keep filming the video, the attacks on 9/11 on the World Trade Center happened. So they abandoned that video and shot a different one. On September 21st, there was the concert America, A Tribute to Heroes. This appeared uninterrupted on all major networks. I can remember watching this. You had major stars like Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty, Celine Dion, Neil Young, Stevie Wonder, Alicia Keys, Dave Matthews, Faith Hill, Mariah Carey, and many others. On October 10th, metal band Anthrax releases a statement in the wake of the Anthrax attacks, jokingly saying they were going to change their name to Basketful of Puppies. They obviously did not change the name of the band. It was trying to be a little bit lighthearted. On November 29th, former Beatle George Harrison passed away from lung cancer at the age of 58. In the following year, November 18th, 2002, Harrison's final album, Brainwashed, would be released. He was recording it while he was in the stages of dying. It's got some incredible songs on it. Even if you don't listen to the whole album, check out the song Stuck Inside a Cloud or Any Road, or even his reimagined version of My Sweet Lord that he did with his son. To wrap up the news stories of 2001, on December 12th, surviving Nirvana members Dave Grohl and Chris Novoselic sued Courtney Love to try to oust her from the board controlling Nirvana's interests, as she had been blocking the release of the Nirvana box set, including the unreleased track You Know You're Right. If you're curious about that song, You Know You're Right, I did a full segment on it in episode 88 of the podcast to celebrate the 20th anniversary of its release. So what were some of the biggest albums released in 2001? I mentioned Jennifer Lopez's album, J-Lo, on January 23rd. February 1st saw the release of Jack Johnson's debut album, Brushfire Fairy Tales. This included his debut hit single, Flake. On February 27th, Dave Matthews Band released their album, Every Day, which was a huge departure from their normal sound. It was way more slickly produced, less, almost no jam songs, very radio-friendly. It was definitely a hit or miss. You either loved it or hated it, depending on your view of the music. March 6th saw the release of Aerosmith's album Just Push Play, which included that single, along with the hit song Jaded. On March 26th, Gorillaz, with a Z, released their self-titled debut album, which included the hit song Clint Eastwood. It has a pretty cool music video. In fact, most of their music videos are really cool, kind of like anime style. On March 27th, Train released their hit album Drops of Jupiter, which included that title track. April 24th saw Janet Jackson release her album All For You, which also included that title track, and also the hit song Someone to Call My Lover. April 24th saw the release of the Bee Gees' final studio album, This Is Where I Came In. It was less than 2 years before Maurice Gibb died of cardiac arrest. May 1st saw the release of Destiny's Child's Survivor album. It included the hit songs Survivor, Bootylicious, and Emotion. I'm sure some of you out there are laughing that I have to say Bootylicious. May 7th saw Paul McCartney release the double CD Wingspan Hits and History, all the music from his time in the band Wings. This double CD was played so much at the restaurant I worked at. I still have the CDs, but I don't think they work too well because they got played hundreds and hundreds of times in a hot, humid kitchen. May 15th saw Weezer release their Green album. This was a massive hit album. It included the hits Hash Pipe and Island in the Sun, which, fun fact, was one of the only songs I could play when I used to play guitar. So there you go. Also on May 15th, the Go-Go's released their final album and their first one in 17 years, God Bless the Go-Go's. It wasn't a major hit, but it gave me an excuse to think about my 80s crush Belinda Carlisle again. June 4th saw the release of Radiohead's Amnesiac album, the follow-up to their kind of odd electro album Kid A. The early 2000s were an odd period for Radiohead. It was one of those that you either loved their music or appreciated what they were trying to do, or you were driven away from listening to them. Luckily, their albums that came after kind of went a little closer to their old style, more like The Bends and OK Computer. On June 12th, Blink-182 released the album Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. This included the hit song The Rock Show. On June 19th, Stone Temple Pilots released their album Shangri-La-Dee-Da, which saw them get a little bit more into pop rock. I'm a big fan of theirs, so I enjoy it, but I could see people who are casual fans would not really like it. On July 17th, R&B singer Aaliyah released her third and final album, which was titled Aaliyah. Sadly, Aaliyah would die in a plane crash on August 25th, only a few days after finishing shooting the video for her hit song Rock the Boat. On July 24th, NSYNC released their fourth and final studio album, Celebrity. This included the hit songs Pop and Gone. And speaking of Gone, Justin Timberlake was gone from the group within a few months, debuting his solo album in 2002. August 28th saw the release of Puddle of Mudd's album Come Clean, which included the hit songs Blurry and Control. September 11th saw the release of Jay-Z's album The Blueprint and Mariah Carey's album Glitter. One was a massive hit, one definitely was not. Mariah Carey's one was also the soundtrack to her movie Glitter, which was also a bomb. On October 1st, Elton John released his album Songs from the West Coast. It included the hit songs I Want Love and This Train Don't Stop There Anymore, the latter of which had a really cool video with Justin Timberlake playing the young Elton John from the 1970s. And the former had the video I Want Love it had the music video with Robert Downey Jr. in it. And I just remember it because the video used to scare the hell out of my little niece Kaylee when she was like 2 years old. October 16th saw Ozzy Osbourne release the album Down to Earth. It included the hit songs Gets Me Through and Dreamer, which that song Dreamer has become more popular, especially now in the time since Ozzy's passed. On October 30th, Michael Jackson released his Invincible album, which would be the last studio album produced during his lifetime. It did well with the songs You Rock My World and Butterflies, but it didn't do as well as he expected, especially with Thriller being his biggest hit album. October 31st saw Britney Spears release her third album titled Britney, which I mentioned her performance of I'm a Slave for You at the Video Music Awards. On November 20th, Prince released his album The Rainbow Children, which, while it wasn't a mainstream hit, it's a really good underrated album with a lot of jazz influences in it. I recommend just checking out any of that. December 11th saw No Doubt release their album Rock Steady, including the hit song Hella Good, which was a term that I understood having just come back from the West Coast. Hella means wicked, or it's the same idea like we say on the East Coast. The top 10 songs for 2001, according to Billboard magazine and their Hot 100 charts, are from 10 to 1, Independent Women Part 1 by Destiny's Child, Again by Lenny Kravitz, Thank You by Dido, Let Me Blow Your Mind by Eve featuring Gwen Stefani, If You're Gone by Matchbox 20, I'm Real by Jennifer Lopez featuring Ja Rule, Drops of Jupiter by Train, All For You by Janet Jackson, Fallen by Alicia Keys, and the number one song of 2001 was Hanging by a Moment by Lifehouse. Some notes about the year 2001. We saw the digital shift. Although Napster had been shut down already, it had changed how people thought about music distribution, file sharing, MP3s were shaking the industry. Like I said earlier, Apple released the iTunes music player. You had the genre battles between pop, rock, and hip-hop, with pop acts like Britney Spears and NSYNC, rock acts like The Strokes and the White Stripes, hip-hop acts like Jay-Z all battling it out. You had the continuing crossover soundtracks with movies like Moulin Rouge with the song Lady Marmalade, Save the Last Dance. And you had international stars making it big in the US, like Kylie Minogue with her song Can't Get You Out of My Head, or Shakira with her song Whenever, Wherever. Yes, there were loads of hit songs, hit albums, hit movies with great soundtracks. The year 2001 in music, it was both a culmination of the 90s pop excess and the birth of a new era, with the rise of Alicia Keys, Linkin Parks, and the Strokes, showing where the decade was heading, while the struggles of veterans like Mariah Carey and Michael Jackson reflecting the changing landscape. Meanwhile, the looming digital revolution promised to reshape music forever. But until next week, that's going to wrap up episode 215 of the In My Footsteps podcast. 2001, the year in pop culture, a bit of nostalgia, and a big happy birthday gift to my niece Emma. I hope you enjoyed this look at what was going on in the world the year you were born. Next week, we will return to spooky season with episode 216. It's going to include a story or series of stories that are a long time coming on this podcast. I will tell you the true stories of when my deceased grandfather, who passed long before I was born, used to come and visit me when I was a young child. It's really perfect for this time of year. We're going to look at a 70s educational short film called The Finishing Line. It is the dangers children face on railways. In other words, don't lay down on the railroad tracks. And the top 5 will feature the best 1960s horror movies. This list was easy to start and hard to finish. So all of that is coming up next week on episode 216 of the In My Footsteps podcast. As I always say, if you enjoy my podcast, if you enjoy my work and you want to support me, you can become a subscriber on Patreon for $5 a month. You can also buy me a coffee. Links to both are in the podcast notes. Find me all over the World Wide Web. Check out my homepage, ChristopherSutherland.com. It's got links to 9 of my 10 books, but the 10th book is so new it hasn't been updated yet. You can find In Their Footsteps on the landing page that's also in the podcast notes. And I'm all over social media, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm always working on some kind of project or promoting a project, marketing a project. It's nonstop. It's like a treadmill, but it's a treadmill where the scenery's always good. Stay tuned in the coming weeks. I'll have more information about the When Henry Met Henry filming process that's coming up pretty soon. I'll have information and the interview on my YouTube channel for the Cape Cod Cthulhu film where I made my debut, playing myself, the podcaster, getting killed in the movie. And I'm sure there will be a lot more news, projects I probably don't even know about yet that I'll be talking about in the weeks and months to come. So to bring this back full circle to wrap up this show, I want to wish happy birthday to my niece, Emma. Emma is someone that is wise beyond her years, smarter than I could ever hope to be, and in my day, I was pretty smart. I took my SATs when I was 13, but that's a story we'll tell sometime in the future. There are times when I chat with Emma that I forget that she's my niece. Only because with nieces and nephews, I remember when they were all newborns. So it can be interesting to chat with someone and get out of that mindset and not see them as the generation after you and just see you as almost like a contemporary. But of course, I can always go back to when she was little, wearing her blue dress all the time, coming in and sitting with me and watching on YouTube back in the early days, old commercials, McDonald's commercials, that's what I always think of. Her wanting a glass of Chinook, what she called chocolate milk. Or going to take her senior photos and taking actual real good ones, but then deciding to wander around the grounds of an abandoned drive-in and finding a homeless encampment and taking pictures of her standing on this old, disgusting mattress and sending the pictures to my sister saying this is what she wanted for her senior photos. And then at least being there outside of the fence to see her graduate high school because it was during the peak of COVID where I drove down to the school and I just stood outside the fence and filmed it. I am very proud of who Emma is as a person, of what she's accomplished already in her life, and I know the road has only started for her. So happy birthday, Emma. I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. I hope it's as funny in places as the time that I got you the roll of toilet paper as a card for your birthday and I signed it. I hope your birthday is soft and absorbent. It's all out of love. Come on now. But as for everyone else out there listening, remember, in this life, don't walk in anyone else's footsteps. Create your own path and enjoy every moment you can on this journey we call life, because you never know what tomorrow brings. Thank you all for listening. This has been the In My Footsteps podcast. I am Christopher Setterlin, but you already knew that. And I'll talk to you all again soon.